Canada's central bank is holding its benchmark interest rate steady at 2.75%. And this comes as U.S. President Donald Trump follows through on his promise to double tariffs on steel and aluminum. So for more on this, we turn now to senior business reporter Peter Armstrong. Hi, Peter. I'm happy to have you here with us. So let's start with the decision from the central bank. We know that the Governor, Tiff Macklem, was speaking earlier. What struck you from what we've seen?
A couple of things that are kind of important. And one of them is just the lens through which we see the world. You remember, a few years ago, everything was colored through the lens of inflation. Well, now it's colored through the lens of tariffs, and it makes us sort of see everything through a different light. And tariffs read through this entire report from the Bank of Canada. In a lot of ways, I think you could take I guess it was seven weeks ago, April's report from the Bank of Canada, where they also decided to hold rates. You could take that and almost republish it verbatim, and people probably wouldn't have noticed all of that much. The hits are all the same, right? Uncertainty remains high, that, the backing and forthing of on again, off again, tariffs, and sometimes they're high, the next day they're low. The inability to sort of manage all of that uncertainty that comes not just with the tariff itself, which causes a huge hit for all these businesses, but the uncertainty and the unknowing of what this trade policy is. What it's going to look like next week, next month, next quarter, next year is literally at this point impossible to tell. There's one clip, though, that really stood out to me in terms of where we are and how they're going to make decisions going forward. Take a listen.
The Canadian economy is softer, but not sharply weaker. And we've seen some firmness in recent inflation data. Against this backdrop, we decided to hold the policy rate unchanged as we continue to gain more information on U.S. trade policy and its impacts.
As we continue to gain more information about U.S. trade policy and its impacts. That's the exact same language he used in April, and we sure don't have much more information about the certainty around U.S. trade policy and its impacts today. But you cast yourself forward to July 30th, the next big Bank Canada decision, but also its updated forecast. Do we have any belief that we're going to have any more certainty around the information or any more information on U.S. trade policy and its impacts? It's really hard to imagine a scenario where all of this is much more clear in July than it is today.
And a big part of that, and I was listening into Macklem's announcement as well, and he was talking about business investment. Of course, that is key to the economic growth in this country. But what happens when you have these tariffs on so many of the products? And investors, of course, want certainty, and this uncertainty doesn't really lean itself to investment.
And I think you're entirely right to circle that, because that's what we're talking about here. You can look at the on-again, off-again policy. You can say it doesn't make sense. You can say this is going to hurt American consumers and businesses as much as, if not more, than Canadian consumers. None of that matters. The one thing that we know does matter, and it matters to the United States, it matters to the administration, but it specifically matters to Donald Trump, is that all of that uncertainty means a company is way less likely to invest in Canada today than it is in the United States. If you've got two plants, one in Michigan, one in, Windsor, where are you more likely to invest in right now? Certainly not the Windsor one. And we've seen that. Amazon just made an announcement in the last hour that it's going to do a $10 billion investment in something, I think, in North Carolina. All of those announcements are the result of a decision they've made that money is better or more certain to find a result and a return in the United States than it is almost anywhere else in the world. And that, at the end of the day, is the one thing that Donald Trump definitely wants to do, regardless of how all of these policies sort of conflict with one another. That's one goal we know is true.
So I guess it's a question of if his policy is effective in the long term.
And what we can do to try to counteract it. I think that's a really important point. And that's what we're going to see heading into the G7 next week. That's what we're going to see in this legislation from the federal Liberals next week. What can Canada do? Mark Carney has said repeatedly, we can do much more for ourselves than the Americans can ever take away from us. I believe there is some truth to that, but we have to start seeing some actual implementation of actual things on the actual ground.
Okay. Thank you for this analysis. That is CBC senior business reporter Peter Armstrong.